Hello, and we are back on the heels of the biggest draft in WNBA history, a launch party for what promises to be the most exciting, anticipated WNBA season yet. And I think they got off to a great start. I'm Seerat Sohi, and we're also going to be hearing from our lovely producer, Victoria Valencia, to break down an exciting night. And I think that when you have an event like the WNBA draft last night, your real goal is to make it feel important, to really just find ways to lift the ceremony of the thing itself. Because going in, we obviously knew that Caitlin Clark was going to go number one to the Indiana Fever. And there's a whole lot of anticipation and momentum building towards this moment coming off of a historic, as far as ratings and excitement go, women's college basketball tournament. So, how do you carry that momentum over? And I think, honestly, the WNBA just hit it out of the park. There's only so much you can do with a draft that you know everybody knows what's going to happen, but it felt like a real event. Like when you think about some of the outfits that we saw, the orange carpet was basically, it looked like New York Fashion Week. Cameron Brink, Angel Reese, Rakea Jackson with two outfit changes. That was incredible. And it got so much attention on social media. And, then you get like the sort of designer crowd, the fashion crowd involved as well. It just, as far as a multiplying event to gain more traction, to carry momentum, I don't think that you could have done better than what we saw. And we just got the TV ratings in. 2.44 million people tuned into this WNBA draft. That is 4x 2004 when Diana Taurasi got drafted. That draft had 600,000 viewers. So once again, literally off the charts. Incredible. Victoria, what did you make of the draft?
I thought it was amazing. I'm super excited to see how far women's basketball has come, especially how well the WNBA put on for women's basketball last night. I think they did everything seamless. The coverage was seamless. The outfits, like you said, incredible. And it was a really exciting watch last night. And so I'm just really happy to see where all this is going. So we kind of had an idea about, who would get drafted when, especially Caitlin Clark with that Indiana Fever first round pick. But what were you thinking, and how do you feel about Caitlin Clark officially going number one to the Indiana Fever?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we knew this was coming. I think the coolest thing is that now we finally got a chance for these both sides to actually be able to officially talk to each other and talk to the media about how they felt about each other. And I think Clark's answers, I'll start there because I mean, she's the main draw. And I think that anytime you get a lens into why a great athlete wants to go where they want to go, it's really interesting. So she talked about the women's hoops culture, like just the time that she spent in the Big Ten playing against the Indiana Hoosiers and how those games would sell out. Like she really loved the environment. And then she was also had a lot of high praise for Lynn Dunn, who is a GM of the Indiana Fever and was also the architect of the Seattle Storm team that won titles in 2004 and 2010. She was the one who drafted Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson, and in Indiana's first press conference after officially drafting Clark, she compared the Clark Aaliyah Boston duo to that duo and talked about how Clark bumps them ahead of schedule. So those two things were really interesting to me. And the more that I think about this fit, the more excited it makes me for what we have coming next as far as Caitlin Clark on the Fever. Now, we know that it's going to look different as far as, her ball dominance goes, but I think all of those things are really, really good. And I keep thinking about how this all feels so seamless. You already have Aaliyah Boston, the number one pick last year, who Clark said, I'm basically just going to give her the ball in the post. I'm just going to be force feeding the post over and over again. So I think we're also going to get a chance to see a different version of Clark who isn't so heliocentric, who isn't so ball dominant all the time. And then she's going to be playing alongside Kelsey Mitchell, who's a great shot creator in her own right, and Melissa Smith, who's going to, be a huge beneficiary of Clark's playmaking. Clark also talked about how she's excited to learn from Erica Wheeler, who is a point guard and a vet. Who, I mean, that's one thing. It's Angel Reese has talked about this too, but all these players are going from the top to the bottom again. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how they all negotiate that as well. But it was just, hey, the more that I think about the fit, the more that I think about Indiana and the culture that they're trying to build, and the fact that Christy Sides, Indiana coach, was basically just like, yeah, like we love the logo threes. Like, why would we not be excited about that? And it's just a great time for Indiana basketball too, to have Caitlin Clark, Tyrese Halliburton, in the same building night after night, to like 365 days a year, basically get to watch one of those two is incredible. Like that's great for a hoops obsessed state. That is, that sold out a draft party, just a draft party where everybody knew what was going to happen. It was a foregone conclusion that Caitlin Clark was going to be a member of the Fever, and yet 17,000 people showed up to an arena that she wasn't even at in Indiana just to watch it happen. Like there's a historic element that follows Clark everywhere she goes because of who she is, because of fact every time she enters a new stage, she does something new and you just want to be a part of it somehow. And this wasn't a game. This draft wasn't a game, but it still had that feel.
I really loved how you touched on her developing under the players there. It's going to be a really exciting watch. But speaking of states that are basketball centered, Los Angeles Sparks just gained Cameron Brink and Rickea Jackson. How do you feel about that duo now coming over to LA?
I think it's great. I think, if you think about if Caitlin Clark is the offensive future of women's basketball, then I think Cameron Brink is basically nature's answer to that question. Somebody who can switch 1 to 5, who can guard players on the perimeter, guard 3-point shooters, can shoot herself, and is just a really great all-around player. She's going to be good now. She's got a ton of potential. And also, I mean, one thing that really worked out as far as the draft order goes, and we'll talk about Reese and Cordoso both being in Chicago, but all the main characters ended up in a big market. So the W is really well set up in that way. Like, look, I mean, you got to first of all, shout out to Cameron Brink in like that slit. Oh my god, in that dress, like she slayed. And Rickea Jackson with the 2 outfit changes. So now you're bringing 2 people. By the way, Rickea Jackson, when she was asked what people don't know about her, she was just like, people are gonna love my personality. And I think that is true. Like Rickea Jackson, if is probably the best player in this draft and has like the most sort of translatable game as far as excitement goes, as far as like the type of players that sell shoes, essentially, that are marketable, just her game, that people don't actually know that much about. So for her to now get to be in a huge market like LA alongside Cameron Brink, that's huge.
Indiana Fever, LA Sparks, first meetup. Who do you think is going to take it? Who do you think is going to be the more dominant rookie?
I mean, the Fever are a better team. Like they're way more. They're just way farther along in their rebuild. Aaliyah Boston going into her second year. Who knows what she's going to be busting out? I definitely like. It's not even fair. The Sparks are just like they're starting this rebuild. You couldn't ask to start a rebuild with 2 better players, other than obviously if they got the number 1 pick in Clark. But yeah, I mean it's got to be the Fever.
Okay. So then we're going to switch it. We're going to move it over. Indiana Fever rookies versus Chicago's newest rookies, the new duo of Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. Who do you got?
Yeah, another situation I think where it's kind of hard to say that the Sky aren't really going to have much of a shot. I mean, anything can happen in one game, and I think the first time that Reese and Clark play against each other, it's going to be box office, and also the fact that now they're in the same conference is really really good for the game as well. There's just going to be more of those matchups where they get to go against each other, continue to build this rivalry. That's going to be really fun. But I also thought it was really interesting how all of that went down. Chicago made a trade the day before the draft with the Minnesota Lynx in order to basically, like, they wanted to guarantee, I think, that they got Angel Reese at the number 7 pick. So Minnesota, in exchange for moving down 1 slot in the draft, got a bunch of draft capital, and they got Sika Kone, who has a ton of potential, I think. And that guaranteed Angel going to Chicago, but it also ended up in a situation that I am very, very happy about because it sent Alyssa Peely, who was one of my favorite players in college basketball, to the Minnesota Lynx under Cheryl Reeve, who is, one of the most creative coaches. And that's what I think Alyssa Peely needs. Like, she's just one of my favorite players. She's so unique. Like, she's listed at 6'2", but she's probably closer to 6 feet. But she's an unstoppable scorer. Like, this is somebody who put up 37 against Camila Cardoso and South Carolina. It's somebody who then put up 37 against their former team in USC. So she's awesome. I'm really excited to see what she does there, and I also wonder if Minnesota played the the sky a little bit because when you listen to Cheryl Reeve in her press conference, they were targeting Alyssa Peely. They really wanted Alyssa Peely, um, and it feels like Chicago took it feels like Chicago made that trade in order to guarantee that they were going to get Reese. But if Minnesota was going to take Peely anyways, then they would have probably been able to get Reese at number 8. Either way, everyone's happy. Everyone got what they wanted. And I just think it's really interesting that Cheryl Reeves wanted Alyssa Peely, who is one of the most polarizing players in the draft, because there's just no one like her. Like, she's such a unique player, but she's so fun to watch in the post. Like, it's that razzle dazzle, up and under, great footwork but like with both feet, ambidextrous. She can shoot. She's like so sneaky and strong with the way that she creates angles. And like, she's one of those players that reminds you that like basketball in the post doesn't always have to be a tall person's game. It's not always about space. So though she can shoot it. She can shoot it. But there's just a lot of different ways to succeed at basketball. And I think you saw this with Zion Williamson in the NBA. Sometimes you're so different that you can't be in the league because you're too different and you're too easy to scout. And she is gonna have to work on her defense. But sometimes you're so different that you present problems that nobody else can answer. And I think that's what Alyssa Peely can do. And she's somebody who like she grew up in Alaska. She played football with her brother Brandon Peely, who's a member of the Miami Dolphins now, growing up, and you can see that influence in her game. The way she kind of can use her size, speed, explode off of a dribble handoff, and like take really low angles against bigger players to, kind of get under them and avoid offensive fouls. And also, man, like Minnesota, they have shooters. Minnesota's got shooters, man. Like you wanna try getting around the screens that she sets. That's not a job that anybody wants. So I'm so excited to watch her.
I totally agree. Leveless Apili, she is Polynesian. She's always putting on for her culture. And so that also explains, the size and the difference there. I think that was like a great name drop. A lot of people, that are not hip to her should definitely get into her this season. She's going to make a huge impact her first year. I totally believe that. Speaking of players that are of a different size than normal that were drafted, we have Deasia Fair at 5'5", who just got drafted by the Aces. Really excited about that. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch the Asia Fair. I think there are certain athletes that, just by will of effort and the way that they play, they're so relentless, driving to the rim. She's so athletic and she just wants to win so badly. Like, you can feel that sometimes when you watch somebody play. And when there's an athlete like that, it's like Russell Westbrook. Like, there's just something about regardless of how you feel about his game, whether it's effective or not, when you watch him for an extended period of time, it's almost impossible not to root for him because of how hard he tries, and you can feel how badly he wants it. And I think as human beings, when you see that in somebody else, you want it for them. It's just like I think it's like a natural response. And Deisha Fair is one of those players that makes me feel that way. She's just an incredible athlete and she's 5'5". Like, just to be 5'5" to get drafted into the W, that's inspiring in and of itself. And she's got an interesting background too, where she grew up in Rochester, New York, and she actually her friend embroidered her suit, which she actually got from Calvin Klein, but embroidered it with flowers to represent Rochester, which is a flower city, which I did not know. So, the more you know, I guess. But she going up there, dreamed of going to UConn and even met with UConn, and had a great meeting with them, and basically then decided instead to go and play at a mid major in Buffalo because when she went there and met with Felicia Jack, she basically just she felt like that was where she belonged. So she took that chance on herself, had, a great few years and just flew under the radar though at the same time. Like this is one of college basketball's leading all-time scorers that we're talking about here that the Aces just got. When the Get Jack went to Syracuse, Fair followed her. And that's how she started to get more national attention and, ended up getting drafted by an Aces team that now she plays with Becky. She plays for Becky Hammon, another undersized point guard who worked her way into becoming a great player on a dynasty in the Aces that loves to score the basketball. So it couldn't be a better fit for her.
I agree. I think Deasia landed in a perfect spot. Staying with the Aces, we had a little surprise there with Kate Martin getting drafted at 18th. Said she was there in the stands, originally supporting Caitlin. I am
Yeah.
so, 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 so happy for Kate. What are your thoughts on that? How you feeling?
Yeah, great moment, honestly. I think that like it's just I mean the power of like the attention of Caitlin Clark once again, but Kate Martin really, really earned this. She's one of my favorite players to watch. She's so gritty. They call her the glue in Iowa, and I think one of the most impressive things about her, and you need players like this to win at a high level. You just do, especially when you're a team like the Aces that already has really, really talented scorers. To have somebody like Kate Martin who will guard anybody. She's so gritty. She is somebody who, for an Iowa team that really struggled on the boards, and knew that they were going to struggle on the boards down in the tournament in particular matchups, like went down and like gang rebounded, like she does what the game demands, and she's able to recognize that in real time. Like, what does my team need? How do I give it to them? And she's got just enough strength and just enough versatility that she can be a lot of those things, and she can shoot the ball too. So she's gonna be. I think she's. That's like. I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like I'm coming from like this history of covering the NBA where plenty of first round picks don't pan out. The NBA too, but there's just so many players where I don't find myself developing an emotional attachment for guys that I don't think are going to make it. It's very rare that that happens. And I think that this is something that's really interesting about the W, and I'm realizing is going to be something that I follow a lot in the W, is this idea that a lot of these players, like, the Peelys, the Fairs, the Kate Martins that we're talking about, like, I'm rooting for them harder because I just want to continue to get to watch them play. I want them to be able to succeed in their path, but it's so much harder to stick to a WNBA team. So it adds these stakes.
The fashion was incredible last night. I feel like everyone added their personal style to it. You can really see who they were as a person, I think, through their fashion choices, from Cameron Brink to Angel Reese to Caitlin, to Deasia. So I was really excited about the fashion choices. What would you say that your favorite was, or what did you notice the most?
Oh, what was my favorite? I don't know. I think Angels was probably my favorite, and it was so interesting that she actually didn't have that outfit until the week of the draft. Apparently, what she ordered didn't fit her, so she had to find a new outfit last minute. But it's Angel Reese. She's obviously going to come through under pressure. She knows what she's doing there. But I also think you hit it on the head as far as players really showing their personality with what they wore, and I think that's so important. Like you mentioned, Alyssa Peely earlier today too. Like what she wore something that like paid homage to her heritage, as a Polynesian indigenous person. She her dress had tribal print on it. She also got something that would make sure that her tribal print and her tattoos was showing as well. And I think like with more eyes on women's basketball now, just being able to use fashion to create an automatic snap signifier of who somebody is from a branding perspective is so important as far as these women continuing to get endorsements, continuing to build their brands. And I think it puts all the like any designer who wasn't working with them, it kind of puts them on notice of like, yo, like we need to get in on this. And Angel Reese, I think she's already done like a campaign with Mael, and she's on it. But there's all these other players like Cameron Brink now getting to LA. Like I'm curious to see where that goes. That's a great market for her to get more into the fashion space as well. And I just think it's like the basketball stuff is going to come first, right? Like as far as building the momentum of the league, so much of it, frankly, is just it's going to continue to come down to Caitlin Clark. If she has a great rookie year, if she can continue that momentum and be able to show at least some of what she did in college right away to the point where she's still box office and she's still somebody that people want to pay to watch. That's going to be the most important thing. But all of these side things that just like add more excitement to the league are also really important as well, and they also provide more opportunities for these women too. So it's just two parts of it that I think everybody hit out of the park.
I agree. I was looking at Cameron Brink and Angel Reese, and with their height and in the gowns that they wore, it's like so clear that it's going to be so easy for them to transition into modeling if they'd like to do that on the side. And then with the brand deals, I think it is going to be so important for makeup, hair,
Mhm.
skincare, whatever, to kind of hop on this while they can, while these girls are starting to continue to grow and boom on the scene. I think it's really important that these
Mhm.
brands do reach out and start to kind of work with them because the market is definitely there. Like now's the time for sure.
I also thought it was really funny how a lot of the W players were tweeting about how this is honestly like the best dress draft of all time. But you had Devereaux Peters talking to Front Office Sports saying that when she was drafted in 2012, we were looking like some of the most athletic accountants you've ever seen. You had Sid Colson saying like in response to Rakea Jackson changing her outfit, like they doing outfit changes now, we would have just slid into another equally matronly outfit and it wouldn't have hit the same. I thought that was hilarious, but it was also very telling as far as like the evolution of how expressive these players are allowed to be. Like the WNBA in the early 2000s was a much more buttoned down league that like wanted its players to be sort of like symbols of femininity and to display a level of heteronormativity to like try to attract a fan base that frankly like was never really there for them in the first place as far as like running away from its identity is like, there's so many players in the league who are queer, who are black, who are more masculine in their presentation. And we didn't actually, ironically, in this draft, we didn't see too much of that side of it. Like, it was a lot of the outfits and stuff were more on the feminine side. But there's also like we are in actually a moment where androgynous fashion is having a moment and has been having a moment. So I feel like the W should continue to capitalize on that as it has more in the last few years and embrace that and continue to. And it's also, I mean, it's kind of going to be kind of interesting to see how that all is navigated now as like more sort of mainstream sports fans get into the NBA or into the WNBA as well. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But I just think that it's a great reflection. Like this night was a culmination of a league that started to allow its players to express themselves and be more who they are. And we got to see that on display today.
I totally agree. Speaking of androgynous outfits, we had Paige Beckers there with the fit. I love that. You had Kate Martin come out of the stands with a nice little androgynous fit. We are seeing this new generation of people coming out on the court. So you're going to see Angel, of course, as we know, with her lashes, with long hair. Rakia Jackson, she's going to go on the court glammed out. You're going to have Camilla with her long, she's known for that fiery red long hair. So I think it's really cool, like you said, to see the changes now that we're seeing. And I think it's exciting. Like this
Mhm.
is real. This is, these are the people that you see now in our generation. I think that it's good to be able to see them on such a huge stage where they're not afraid to be themselves. Someone asked me why I like certain players so much. And I think that it's they're being themselves. Like they're without fear. And, they're getting a lot of pushback for some of that stuff. Like in the past, a lot of players have gotten pushback for the long hair, for the lashes. And we're in this generation now where the players are like, oh no, this is who I am. Like, accept it. This is not going anywhere. I'm coming out on the court every time like this. So like get used to it type of thing. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, one of the coolest things, like, when I think about Angel Reese, for example, I always wonder how she's internally actually feeling about it. I don't think it's easy to be the main character on the internet and be a villain to so many people, but the way that she wears it and the way that she can be, like, the main character online and then just go out to an NBA game the next day, I just think that's so badass. Like, as, like, a generation that is sort of, like we're all sort of getting used to the internet, and I think it's actually kinda different for this younger generation. Like, we grew up in, like, the transition of people that are strangers having a level of access to us that is just, like, unprecedented, and being able to, be face to face with the opinions of people that we don't know on the internet, like keyboard warriors that are just willing to say whatever, and I think that this younger generation actually has, like, a better sense of detachment towards those things, Like, I think that somebody like Angel Reese just understands that it's a brand in a way that sometimes, like, even I find myself feeling, like, protective about the things that people say about her when maybe she doesn't actually need that. Like, maybe these kids that are, like, natives to this environment actually understand all of this and are able to compartmentalize it better than some of the people like us who never grew up with it and then sort of had to adapt to all of it. And I also love that you say that it's just who they are. Like, that's an awesome aspect of all of this, is that these players are just reflections of young people nowadays. And I think that's also, like, part of the reason that, like, it's an undercovered aspect of the rise of women's basketball, is the amount of young people that are really, really getting into this. Like, when I saw Paige's outfit, I was like, I could hear the 18-year-old girls in, like, my TikTok feed and my algorithm screaming. Like,
The
the
edits
edits
are
were just
coming.
making
They're
themselves.
coming. They are coming.
Yeah. Like, I was like, "Oh, no, don't do it to him, Paige." Like, oh my god.
But yeah, she looked amazing. I think you're right. I think that's this generation, like, think whatever you wanna think about how I dress, but this is who I am, and I think they have formed somewhat of a tougher skin because they have grown up with that, like, social media and comments. So I think it's cool that these athletes have the ability to, share with us who they are, but
Mhm.
also, be somewhat detached from it, like you said. So, really exciting.
Yeah, we saw this from Jared McCain at Duke too, who, is pissing off some of these, very, very, very masculine macho keyboard warriors with, his nails, and, is also, getting endorsements, making his money as a result of that too. So there is in this age of more niche marketing, in this age of more gender fluidity, there is a lot of money to be made in just being yourself. It's a very unique marketing moment for a league like the WNBA and for sports in general, but especially women's sports. So it's part of the basketball is my favorite part of it, but that side stuff is also just really cool to watch.
Before we go, what would you say is one thing that you're most looking forward to as we approach this WNBA season with this crazy draft class?
Honestly, like, I gotta keep it real. It's Caitlin Clark. That's who I'm most excited to watch. She's brought a whole bunch of new people into college basketball. She's box office. She's incredibly exciting to watch. She's a game changer. I want to see what she looks like on the next level, and it's coming sooner than we think. Like, May 15 is the first day of the WNBA regular season. I think that obviously I think these athletes are going to be exhausted by the end of the year, but as far as continuing the momentum, the timing couldn't have been better. What about you?
I would have to say I'm very excited for the addition of the rookies, but I'm really excited to see some of the returning vets. So we got Skylar Diggins. She's going to be coming back this season, Seattle Storm. I'm excited to see Aja Wilson just continue to do her thing, Kelsey Plum and the Aces. Really just excited to see how the WNBA sort of reforms with these new players here, just kind of how it changes with them. Because I think they are going to bring about a change. Whether they know it or not, I think it's going to cause a huge change this season for basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you have, some of the top all-time scorers in college basketball all entering the W at the same time. It's like I feel like we're entering a golden age. It's gonna be really exciting. And it's only gonna keep getting better from here, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to see what goes on. And I gotta find it. I think I'm just gonna be a de facto Indiana Fever fan. But I'm excited to catch a game this year and stuff too. It's just like it's the momentum and the energy. Just like when you see things like this happening, it just naturally it makes you want to be part of it. So I'm super hyped. Thanks for hopping on, Victoria. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back soon. And if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, engage, engage, engage. We love engagement. The algorithm loves engagement. This is to the point of the conversation that we just had, the era that we're in right now. So it is what it is. We'll talk to you guys soon.